this means we're picking next, all right? Back at 7, where we started. Tom's going to take both, so who do we got?
Ray Jennings. We take Ray Jennings.
That's right. Cleveland royalty. Haven't I been telling everybody that that's what we need, a running back? Still want to quit, Coach? Does this sound like a team that you want to coach? Because the Browns are ready to roll. We just need the right man at the wheel.
I can coach this.
Why don't you give Ray Jennings a call? Ask him if he wants to be a Brown. And tell him to pack his bag so he can join us at our party.
My pleasure.
I'm gonna be a Brown.
You're gonna be a Brown.
General Manager Sonny Weaver Jr. took one pick in the first round, the number 7 pick. He sprinkled it with fairy dust, wished upon a star, and somehow he turned it into not 1, not 2, but 3 potentially impactful players for his team next year. 1 pick.
He took a chance. He went with his gut. He took his guys. Make no mistake about it. The Cleveland Browns are his team now for sure.
All right, welcome in. Inaugural show of the Gridiron and Hardwood podcast series. A little bit of bringing the band back together. I'm joined as always, and once again,
yes, indeed,
by the good Ricardo King. As I mentioned, this is a bit of a bringing the band back together. So, backstory here real quick. I have been in radio for 10 years. Ricardo's been in for quite a bit as well. And we will bring in a number of guests that we've cultivated over years and years. Some of which that I believe are the best broadcast sports media people in the industry. Some you'll know, some you won't. But by the end, I believe you'll all be better for it. Absolutely. As I said, the name is Gridiron and Hardwood. That basically gives you the idea that while we don't dislike baseball and hockey and soccer and the Olympics, we will be spending the vast majority of our time talking football and basketball. That would be pro for both, college for both, drafts for both, and of course off-season for both, which brings us into what we'll get to in just a moment. The official start of the NFL year has not begun. That kicks off on Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. But we already see some action. We've got some would-be free agents verbally committing. A couple guys been released and verbally signed. And then, as we saw, we got plenty of trades. But before we get into all of that, the bulk of today will be spent talking about the Combine, results therein. Giving you some idea of the people you should be aware of as we get into the NFL draft. While I don't expect most of you to spend every minute of every round in front of your TV, as I will, we'll give you enough that you'll feel confident that at least through the first 3 or 4 rounds, if a name is called and goes to your team, you'll be familiar with who they are, what they did in the Combine, and to be honest, whether that really matters all that much. We do comically refer to it as the Underwear Olympics. But that being said, that gives you the sentiment that maybe it's overblown. It doesn't matter. And nothing is more infuriating than someone saying that the draft or its process doesn't matter. In short, the Combine is intended to give us, in a vacuum, what these players look like athletically, so that it will either reaffirm what we already knew to be true based on game film, or it will inspire us to go back and look at them again. And for me, I'll drop one real quick, and that is Shaq Griffin from University of Central Florida. As a talent evaluator and someone who fancies the draft, watches the draft, and as you can see, a fan of a team that often looks forward to the draft, Shaq Griffin was the guy that scared me. Quite frankly, 6'1", 220 is not very impressive. But the kid is. And the Combine and what he did there, and we'll talk about that later, is what inspired me to go back and look at him again. So that's some of the stuff we'll get into. We've got a great show. We're going to bring in the gentleman that I would refer to as the hardest working man in new media, and that would encompass, for those that don't know, anything that is not terrestrial or made for TV. Podcasting, streaming, live blogging, anything and everything that's new to us now in the world of media, but is gaining great speed. He is the James Brown of that. I have never talked to Rick on the phone or otherwise where he wasn't doing something else as well. He's always setting something up, lining up interviews, breaking down things, and we're going to talk to him for a good bulk of the show today, which is nice. We don't get to normally in the world of terrestrial radio, you don't get these 90-minute style interviews. So we're really going to pick his brain about some of this and get into it. And, of course, we will find a way to circle it back around the Browns, I guarantee it. But we'll talk about everybody and how it affects the entire league. In addition to that, following Rick, towards the end of the show, we're going to bring in Damon Johnson, who has an athletic career of his own and is probably one of the better gentlemen I know to look at, break down, and analyze various things. So we'll bring him on to break down what I'm just generically referring to as quarterback workup. He literally went through, as a Browns fan himself, worried about quarterback. He really wanted to get a firm idea as to what's what. So he actually broke down play by play by play, doing the kind of legwork I just don't have time for. So we're going to bring him in later on and talk about that as well. So real quick, just before we jump out to our first break here, some, I don't want to call it breaking news because it's a couple days late. We want to let it marinate for you. I think the most recent one is Richard Sherman.
Yes.
And here's the interesting thing. I like Richard Sherman. I don't want him on my team. It has nothing to do with anything other than while he is the reason that we like big corners now, he's just a little long in the tooth. And my particular team basically went, you've seen those videos where they blow up a building? Yeah. That's what we did. They basically lit dynamite, blew it all up. Right. Sashi Brown cleaned house, then got let go for doing his job. And now we've got a real GM who's acquiring players now. So we've been able to build up. I just don't have room for an aging corner, as good as he still is.
Yeah, I mean the Niners though they're rebuilding as well.
See, the Niners are rebuilding as well, but not as dire. They at least won some games last year. Yeah. Now that being said, that brings up the interesting point. The team destination is San Francisco. San Francisco is really doing some great things. If you're a San Francisco 49er fan, don't worry about where you are right now. Yeah. Everything is great.
Forget about last year.
I actually really wanted Jimmy Garoppolo badly. And when that didn't happen, he went to San Francisco. I thought, okay, that makes sense. I did not expect him to go 5-1 or whatever it was. So quarterback set. You've got, a few nice pieces. I think we are going to see some addressing of offensive skill players and defensive secondary on that particular team, starting with Richard Sherman. It's San Francisco, not Oakland, which is good because when I first heard staying in the Pacific Northwest, of course my first thought is Oakland. I went, oh no, you're not putting Sherman on the same team as Crabtree. Now.
But now they're going to Vegas, so.
Yeah, right. So, with that being said, there's no direct conflict. However, I just think that there's something to be said for not putting Sherman and Crabtree too close together geographically. But, we'll see what happens there. I think Sherman's going to be a big part of transitioning into what should be a very nice period of time for the 49ers. Now, the 3 years, $40 million, not bad. Didn't break the bank, so that's nice as well. Now, getting away from some of the older gentlemen, I've gone too long without talking about it. I am absolutely over the moon. Not even joking about it. And unlike most Browns fans, I'm not going to sit here and proclaim Super Bowl, proclaim playoffs. I'm not delusional. But one thing that they did struggle with is getting first downs, getting tough plays when they mattered, and having someone that was reliable who was not named Josh Gordon. By the way, special occasion, I wanted to dress up.
Yeah, of course.
So this is my going out Josh Gordon jersey. Someday I'll get a top hat to match or something. But for those that don't know, I am as close to the unofficial president of the Josh Gordon fan club as there is. So
from
not to be a dictator here. But I will not tolerate any disparaging comments about Mr. Josh Gordon. Now, when I say that, by all means, say whatever you want to say as we interact going forward, but just know that if you take shots at Josh Gordon, I might destroy you. So, that being said, Josh Gordon's great. He's phenomenal. But even as we saw, they actually tried to get him working in the slot, getting some short stuff. First play right out of the gate last year was a little 4-yard slant that he turned into 8 yards and trucked somebody. So he's awesome, but he can't be the end-all be-all. So when I was sitting at work, checking on the internet, which I'm not supposed to do, and I see someone posted a picture of Will Smith from The Fresh Prince. Yeah. One of these Vine videos. Right. And even this freeze frame, it looked like he crapped his pants. It's one of those. It's early too, like the bright colors and everything. Yeah. You know, pre-Fresh Prince, really. And it's just that look, and I go, and it says Browns. I thought, oh no, what do we do? And I hit play, of course, and it's just him, freaking out. And then it says, Cleveland Browns acquire Jarvis Landry. And automatically, I'm already, I'm like, can I leave early? Can I clock out? Because I can't be contained right now. This is crazy. He was the number one free agent non-quarterback that I wanted. And that was when he was a free agent. He got franchised. I thought the ship had sailed. And then, as, again, someone who roots for a team that he has a lot of needs, I was worried about compensation. The compensation's fine. I'll give you a couple draft picks in the middle. I don't care. Give me a guy that averages 100 receptions a year and is basically this generation's Hines Ward. I'll take that all day, every day. In addition to that, following that up, John Dorsey, showing quite the savage that he is, went out and traded a third-round pick. We only had one, and who cares? For Tyrod Taylor. Now, this opens up some interesting conversation about what's going to happen in the future. There's a theory that Cleveland absolutely has to get quarterback right no matter what, and that would not include Tyrod Taylor.
Why not?
I don't know. Here's the thing. Once he left Baltimore and went to Buffalo, he became a very nice, efficient, mobile quarterback-ish. But he stays in the pocket for the most part. He is a pick you apart unless you force him out. And if you force him out, then you're going to pay. True. Which, believe it or not, is what I think you're going to get from Lamar Jackson. But, again, we'll get to that later. So, I like him. I think the move is good. I think going after someone like A.J. Dalton, wow. I just mixed two people together. A.J. McCarron, A.J. Dalton's backup, which gives mixed reviews. Not everybody's on board with that because he only has 5 starts. I wasn't crazy about him coming out of the draft. But I was willing to take it because we need a bridge. Yeah. There needs to be something that gets you from here to there. The question is, what does this mean for the future rookie quarterback that everyone thinks they're going to pick in the top 4? And with that said, let me just drop in a disclaimer. If this team, and we're going to do a live draft day reaction show live while it's happening, so you can actually see grown men screaming when things happen. That's good or bad. I remember back when Buffalo, ironically, took 2 players in the first round that I didn't think deserved to be in the third round, and you would have thought like a hood fight broke out, or you would have thought that a whole bunch of people run out of a movie theater. I mean, people were in pain at the reactions of those. So we're going to do that. But with Tyrod Taylor, this poses a great question. You had A.J. McCarron, who is 6'4", 220 pounds, pocket passer, is not going to run across the street.
No, at all.
Tyrod Taylor, who is a good pocket passer, who has the ability to get out on the move, throw on the run, and will burn you if you force him to run for, say, a first down. In addition to that, of course, the whole large elephant in the room, Kirk Cousins, which may be the most red herring there is. All right, right off the top, rank him right now without any
Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, in the league, a starting quarterback. What is Kirk Cousins? He is not 1, he's not 2, because no matter what order that is, that's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, and that is not up for discussion. After that, you start moving down. You've got the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Drew Brees, Andrew Luck, if he comes back healthy, Matt Ryan. So knowing that there are 32 starters, and he would have to be one of the 32. I'm not going to be an a-hole. But where do you think he fits? Put a number on it.
I'll put Kirk Cousins in the teens.
Okay. See, my thing is
high teens.
all offensive, all off season long. I've been saying he's arguably the 20th best starting quarterback in the NFL. Now, with that being said, 18, 17, whatever we're talking about, that means that there are easily 15 other quarterbacks that are better.
Yes.
So I'm sorry if the Redskins screwed everything up for everybody and kept franchising a guy, and the rules of the franchise is it keeps increasing. So a guy that's probably worth $14, $15 million is now looking to get a payday upwards or north of $30 million per year. No thank you, let someone else do that. I have no interest in him whatsoever. And that's because, quite frankly, I don't think that the difference between a Tyrod Taylor and a Kirk Cousins is all that measurable. So we're still waiting to see what's going on. We're here in Denver. People in Denver going absolutely crazy. They've already traded away Aqib Talib to shed some salary to make a run after him. I think it's a mistake, but hey, it's John Elway, and he doesn't like to develop a damn thing. So with all that being said, we've got Jarvis Landry, we've got Tyrod Taylor, Richard Sherman. I believe Muhammad Wilkerson is going to end up somewhere in the northern Midwest, probably Green Bay. But we'll get to some of those as they come down. So real quick, what we're going to do here, we're going to step out for a break. When we come back, we're going to bring in Rick Morris, and we're going to get into the actual position breakdowns as groups are concerned. Now, one last nugget I want to put in your mind specifically to hold on to. You got 6'4", 220 we said no to. Yeah. Kirk Cousins is 6'4", 230. I'm going to say no to that. We're not going to trade for Nick Foles. If you're a fan of a team looking at the top of the draft and wondering how's it going to go, number one, I'm not going to say I'll abandon ship, but I'm going to protest hard, and I'm going to let it be known that I have a significant problem if this Cleveland Browns team with 1-4 in the top do not come out of this with Saquon Barkley. Now, we'll get into that because Rick, while he likes him and wants him badly, he and I differ on one little point. It's going to be fun to get into. So once we get past that, big pocket passers that don't run. 6'1", 220, 215-pound Tyrod Taylor, who can run, gets open, throws guys open on the run, but can pick you apart from the pocket. Who does that sound like?
Well, I thought you both might want to know. AUSA has determined that the shooting of Jess Timmons was good. A hell of a shot. Would you consider what might have happened if you'd missed?
Darnold flush in the pocket. Now throws on the run. End zone caught. Touchdown.
Darnold. All day to throw it back in the end zone. Touchdown, Stephen Mitchell.
Pressure, Darnold with time and another touchdown to Tyler.
Big Sam Darnold touchdown.
Play action. Darnold looking. Throws for the end zone. Vaughn. Touchdown. USC.
Darnold. Looking left. Steps up. Throws. Touchdown.
He is passing on fourth down to win a Pac-12 championship, and the Trojans will do just that.
Can't carry two. I don't know how to shoot a basketball, and my handwriting is barely legible, but I don't miss.
Hi, what can I do for you?
Call Rick Morris.
Calling Rick Morris.
Technologies.
Hello.
Hey, Rick, welcome to the show. Welcome back as well to the viewers. We are joined on the Google Home Hotline, if that's what we're going to call it. Gotta love technology. We're going to bring in Rick Morris, as I mentioned at the top of the show, the hardest working man in new media. And we're going to begin to break down a bit of this combine, winners and losers, top performers, and then we'll get into actual position groups. So, Rick, we already talked about the draft movement and the trade movement and the free agency verbal signings, if you will. So with that sort of on the back burner, and I'll give you your time, of course, to get into some of those. But real quick, I want to start with some of the just off the cuff winners and losers. Anybody that jumps out at you that either made a lot of money or absolutely confirmed that they deserve to go as high as we think they're going to go?
Well, there's a couple of guys, and these are the obvious points out there, and I'm sure they've probably been touched upon and will be touched upon. But really, what a sensational combine it was for a couple of different players here. Not least of which Shaquem Griffin going out there and putting up the numbers that he did and solidifying himself as somebody who shouldn't be going towards the end of the draft just because of his handicap, somebody who really shows that he can project out as a real difference maker in the NFL. So I'm not really breaking any ground there and talking about him or Barkley. They're the most obvious winners of it. The most obvious loser of the combine. I'm not breaking any new ground here either. Orlando Brown. That was about as bad as it could have gone.
Yeah, I've forewarned the listeners that we are going to somehow circle this back to the Browns. If not, because as you mentioned in our conversations, that for the first time in a very long time, the story of the draft is the Browns, a team, not a player or position. So with that being said, checking the wires, if you will, of fanboys and what the fans are clamoring for, I'm actually stunned at the point that we are still seeing anyone, Browns or otherwise, that are actually angling to get him. Because, look, 40 times are what they are, but it wasn't just a bad 40 time. It were 2 bad 40 times north of 5. If it's 5'2", who cares? Okay, if he's good in the drills. He wasn't good in the drills either. He looks slow. His footwork looks horrible. He looks like the kind of guy who's benefited his entire football career from just being bigger than everyone.
Exactly, and I think I could have bench pressed more than what he did.
Well, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but here's what I do remember. The lead guy was Quentin Nelson at 35. The surprise guy was Saquon Barkley, which we'll get to at 29. And if I'm not mistaken, it was somewhere in the ballpark of 14.
Yeah, that was pretty bad because, again, all of this, you can look at all the different things about this and say, well, what does that have to do with playing the position? What does that have to do with game day? It's about preparation and professionalism. This is the most important job interview you'll ever have. Absolutely. And if you go in there completely unprepared...
You expect these guys to be at their absolute peak, at their best in this moment. And the problem is, with that there's a lot of fans out there that believe that because it's the Underwear Olympics that it doesn't matter, and it's just a good moment. But here's the thing. In addition to that, for me, when it comes to offensive linemen, and I learned this the hard way with Joe Thomas, is the 40 time doesn't matter as much. It's the footwork. It's the fact that he's a nimble bear, as they say. I don't believe that if we're going to line up Orlando Brown, and he's a right tackle, he's not a left tackle, but if we're putting him at right tackle, whatever, let's just say he's going to face a Von Miller. I don't think he can slide fast enough to get out there to stop Von Miller from just whipping around and getting past and putting his quarterback on his ass. So my issue is, yes, you expect him to be much better than he was. My bigger issue is, even if he was better, I don't think he's got the footwork to make it. I would not be surprised if he's still on the board at the top of the third round. I think he lost that much ground as opposed to being, maybe the second or third right tackle taken. Now that we've sort of identified the ugly duckling in the room, and we've got Shaquem Griffin, I think the other one that we got to mention, just because it solidifies what I think is maybe the best, most complete prospect we've seen in a very long time, despite what people at the top are saying fan-wise, is Saquon Barkley. It wasn't that he was good. It wasn't that he was prepared. It was that he exceeded expectation at every single step.
He was incredible, and you combine that with the body of work on the field and performances in the history of the combine.
While we're talking about Barkley, there's one thing I did want to mention that there's no way to quantify this that I'm aware of. When you look at the numbers, and I know that's what most people are going to come back to, is he Le'Veon Bell? Is he Zeke? Is he Todd Gurley? I personally believe that he is. However, if you look at, say, Ezekiel Elliott, his stats, his production in the final year at Ohio State, he hit 100 yards rushing every single game with one exception. And those Ohio State fans will remember this was the Michigan State game where, for whatever reason, he just didn't get carries. So if you throw that out, he's averaged, if not gotten, 100 yards in every single game. Now, Barkley is not that. Barkley has had games where he was, 80 yards and 2 touchdowns from scrimmage. He's had games where he was 150 yards rushing. And my one thing I just want to throw out, I could be completely off my rocker here, is I believe that based on what we saw at the Combine, what he proved to be as an athlete, when you consider what they were doing at Penn State, the type of team they were running, I firmly believe right now that the lack of steady production is more a product of what that team was doing in order to win a college football game and less about a person's inability to do it. There are some concerns that maybe he's not Zeke running between the tackles. I think we're going to find out, especially on a decent offensive line, that he's perfectly acceptable there.
Well, exactly. And it is kind of the opposite, and fortunately so for whatever team that drafts him, of what Nick Saban, where he absolutely murders these guys before they even hit the pros. Trent Richardson, anybody? Had with Barkley, the body of work that was outstanding, but a level of what his tape is, what the combine numbers are. I agree with that. He's the closest thing in this draft, and maybe in recent years, to the complete package. And that's the ultimate. That's a 10 out of 10 when you're at that level.
And that brings up an interesting point, Ricardo. And you played in the trenches.
Oh, yeah.
So my question is, just from a prepared standpoint, what you do when you're facing whatever, if you know you're facing a guy that can beat pretty much every defender to the corner, he's going to run 4.3 when he gets to his top speed. He's probably quicker than anyone you've ever seen. And on top of that, if he's running at you, that's 230 pounds who can bench press 225 29 times, and he's never been hurt. And for those that have never actually seen the kid, he doesn't look like the typical running back, and that's because his lower trunk is thick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So as a defensive lineman or even an offensive lineman blocking for him, that's got to make you, on one side, lick your chops, and on the other side, make you wonder, okay, we might need a little help here.
Yeah. As an O-lineman, you give him just enough, and he's gone.
Yeah.
You give him enough space, he's going to take off, go to the house, run over people. As a defensive lineman, it is a little, I'm not going to say disheartening, but it's one of those things, like you said, where you're like, okay, can we load the box up a little bit, Coach? Because, this guy's,
my initial thought, and the first thing I see in my mind, is that play where he's just running right off the guard, and the defensive tackle is sealed his block.
Yeah.
And then right then he sees the guy and he reaches to get him.
Oh, no arm tackles.
Oh no, not at you. Not
he's running through every arm tackle. Yeah. You have to, as a defensive lineman, you have to shed your block immediately and be standing in the hole ready to receive that blow, because you're going to take a blow every time.
So clearly, everyone here is on board with the greatness of Saquon Barkley.
Absolutely.
I really do think, as Rick said, he's the closest thing to a complete package, complete prospect we've seen in a long time. I even tried to quantify as saying he's the best since Adrian Peterson, but here's the thing. He's a better prospect than Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
Let that marinate for a second. So we'll dive into more of him when we compare him to the other running backs, because there's a little cliche that's starting to bother me, where people believe that the running back position has been devalued. I disagree. I think it was a string of poor running back drafts. So we'll get into where we believe he goes and where he compares to the other guys. There's a few other guys I really do like, just not as much. But Rick, if we could switch gears just slightly, the wide receivers are an interesting group, and we'll get to the group later. But for me, there's 3 guys kind of in the middle. I'm not even looking at the first round, but 3 guys in the middle. We have Jersey, who's one here at the network, who's a huge, albeit protesting the NFL, a huge fan of one of the St. Brown brothers, Equanimous, And I assure you that when the next brother or two comes through, we're going to get a lot of love from Jersey on Amon-Ra St. Brown and Osiris.
Something like that.
Anyway, Equinemius St. Brown out of Notre Dame, 6 foot 4.5, only 210 pounds, but did run in the mid 4.4s. Absolutely looks like he's a sort of Julio Jones, poor man's version, needs to be developed, but kind of guy. Also, the DJs. DJ Shark from LSU, and I've been hesitant on LSU receivers, and I woke up one day and just went, just snap out of it. They get to the NFL and they blossom. So DJ Shark ran a 4.34 40 and looked really good, especially in the gauntlet drill. And then we've got DJ Moore, who's only 6 foot, but Maryland, and some, including Sean, your boy Steve Smith, absolutely believes he is the best, most complete wide receiver in the entire draft class. So, Rick, of any of the wide receivers, any one guy jump out at you?
Brown kind of does, for the reasons you're talking about with the Julio. I think he can fill out a little bit more, probably without losing much of his top end speed.
Yeah, I definitely like him. I love the size. I think you're absolutely right. He's 210 now, but everything about his physique says he could easily get to 220. I think 225 is not a stretch if we're looking over the course of, say, 3 years. Because you don't want to just bulk up for the sake of bulking up. We don't want a David Boston situation. Because we started off talking sort of winners and losers, there is another name I want to mention, and I was a huge proponent of this guy. I was actually one of the few Browns fans that was like, you know what? Receiver, 4. Don't even care. Now, I've completely changed my tune on that, and that is Cortland Sutton, who is, 6'4", 230 pounds. And when you watch him in games, this is almost the anti-combine conversation. When you watch him in games, you're like, he's insane. He's big, he goes up, he high points the ball, he fights for it. He's one of these Randy Moss in the 50-50 ball category, and that's where it stops. But when it comes to the 50-50 balls, you almost are willing to bet money you don't have that Sutton's going to get it. Here's my thing. I was waiting for the combine because I really wanted to see him run low 4.4s or even break off like a 4.39, 4.38, something that makes you go, okay, yeah, we were right about how good he was. Now, I still think he's very good. My fear is that it's a Laquan Treadwell situation where, despite his ability to catch the ball, he does not have NFL separation. Are you hearing anything, Rick, that supports the idea that Cortland Sutton from SMU could fall because maybe he doesn't have the explosion we might have thought that he should?
I think so, but for that very reason, again, I don't mean to be the turd in the punch bowl here, Landry, and his massive yards per catch average over the course, but you're already looking at guys that don't have the sort of explosiveness. I think you sort of need to join everybody else in passing on.
Like, I don't want to beat up on the kid. He's great. He looks the part. It's just that the last time we saw a guy that really caught the ball well and was very successful but ran a relatively slow time, it wasn't embarrassing like Orlando Brown. It wasn't as good as I was hoping for. Sit tight, Rick, for just...
You know, I think back, Dion, and I go back to 1983, and I start thinking about Dan Marino.
He's dropping.
And then more recently,
what? Picks number 2 and 3 are not Bo Callahan. Nobody's picking him.
Green Bay in the mid-20s. And there are all kinds of rumors going on right now. Why is this kid dropping? And
everybody's freaking out, Sonny. Jesus, what if he drops to 7th? Seahawks have 7th. What if they ended up with Callahan?
They had that kid GM down in Jacksonville. What is his name?
Jeff Carson.
Well, congratulations, Jeff. You looks like you got yourself Bo Callahan to quarterback the Jacksonville Jaguars.
You got to be straight with me.
About what?
What's wrong with Callahan? Why is everyone passing on him?
I think he's a bust.
What?
To be honest, Jeff, it's a character thing for me. But look, I have other needs. So if you want to make a trade for 6, I can make that happen right now. If you're not sold on Callahan, you can still come out of here with a handful of draft picks. You look like a seasoned pro. And everybody wonders what you're up to next year. Every year, someone comes out of this looking like a donkey. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good, because tomorrow I got a feeling it could be you if you don't make this deal. Take our number 2 pick this year, next year, and the next year after that. That's 3 years of number 2 picks.
4. Want your next 4 number 2s.
Yeah. Nah, Jeff, I'm not going to do that. Stay with me on planet Earth here, all right? You know what I just offered you is fair.
So 3 years of second round.
That's right, for your pick right now. And you and your guys can regroup, figure yourselves out, and relax. This is a good deal for both of us.
Deal.
Nice. Good, Jeff. You did good. Call it in.
And welcome back to the Gridiron and Hardwood Combine Recap Show. We are joined in the palatial Triple J studios with myself, Jason, and Ricardo. And we're joined on the phones by Rick Morris, who's here breaking down all of the Combine positional groups. So, Rick, at this point, I just want to toss it over to you and let you take it from here, starting with the quarterback group. And I'm sure we're going to hear some less than ideal commentary on some guys people like, and hopefully you will correct people on who should go at the top.
Consensus at number 1. In fact, there's not. But there seems to be a consensus at number 2. Voice a lot of people seems to be Josh Rosen. I don't really have a lot of qualms about him, but the fact that he's the most pro-ready guy, that's not necessarily something you're looking for at the top of the draft. You're looking for upside. You're looking for a game changer, and I just don't know what his ceiling is. There are 2 other guys that are very high risk, high reward. They're in the mix there too. You've got Baker Mayfield, who people are making a lot of the Manziel comparisons to him because of his size, because of his attitude, because of a lot of reasons. So for good and bad, primarily bad, he seems to be compared to Johnny Manziel because of the traits. It scares me in terms of the Browns taking him, or quite frankly, any other team, because it's about once every 10 years or so you get a small quarterback that comes into the league and is wildly successful. Drew Brees, Russell Wilson. Do you trust that your team is going to be the one to get this right, that you've got this once in almost a decade kind of a guy, and that he's going to be that guy? There's just so much risk involved because of the size and having to sort of beat the odds in terms of that. Josh Allen is the opposite. Josh Allen is all physical tools, all arm. He had a great combine in terms of his ability to throw the ball long and fairly accurately. But anyway, I haven't mentioned thus far is the one that I think should be the top quarterback overall. I tend in a lot of ways, I kind of define myself as the old, to use that term from the 2008 presidential election, the bitter clinger. I am the bitter clinger. I don't change my opinions on things very easily. I cling to my opinions. A year ago, we were saying Sam Darnold is possibly the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. And his 2017 wasn't as great as his 2016, granted. And he made a lot of turnovers and had a lot of issues like that. You know who's another guy who had a lot of turnovers? Is Brett Favre. Brett Favre learned to kind of rein it in enough. And these are things that, again, you can adjust the way that you play in terms of that. For example, using two hands on the football, which a lot of times he doesn't do enough. That's an easier thing to do than, say, changing your throwing motion. Some people are also questioning his throwing motion, by the way, but it's been pretty successful thus far. Sam Darnold, with his projectability, his upside, the things that he can do, Sam Darnold just looks like he could be a very special quarterback. And again, not to put myself over too much, but the last couple of quarterbacks I wanted the Browns to take in the draft were Deshaun Watson, Teddy Bridgewater in 2014, Jared Goff in 2016. I wanted them to trade up to one. And I'd say it's turned out pretty well on all three of those guys. Say Darnold, as much as some people are ready to dismiss me for it right now because he's not, it's trendy to turn on. You look at the turnovers and all the things that he didn't do in 2017. But I'm not about trendy, Jason. I'm about sticking to my guns. It's quarterback in my book.
Well, and the funny thing there is, I seem to be on the other side of it. As a draftnik, I just keep looking at all of the assets that you see at the top, I'm like a kid in a candy store with like a nickel in my hand. I need more, and I got to find a way to get more. So I'm always going to fall in, and most Browns fans hate this. I want to trade back. I want to get more picks. I want to trade back to trade up. So I get that that's not feasible, and I know that there's some glaring issue to fix here. And to be honest with you, I'm right there with you on Darnold at the top. So if you're going to say there is one guy, I think it's Darnold. Flat out, he's got the size, he's got the arm strength. And here's something that no one's picking up on, and it's driving me nuts. And maybe it's a Browns fan thing, maybe Buffalo people will get it too. But when you are a fan of one of these lesser good teams that can't get first downs on a regular basis, you find yourself in situations like a 3rd and 4. And you're like, we should be able to do this. and they don't, and they consistently are bad at moving the chains. One thing that if you go back and watch the tape, Sam Darnold to me might be the best quarterback, prospect or existing, NFL starter or not, that I have ever seen at processing the progressions quickly and getting the ball out with touch, delivered at just the right point, in just the right place, so that his receiver can make a play. I've not Phillip Rivers, not Ben Roethlisberger. I cannot think of someone who's better at the short to intermediate stuff. And if you're a fan of a team in the top that's bad, like the Browns, or even the team like the Giants who are having some troubles, there's something to the fact that he is able to get out of trouble and do it well. So for me, Sam Darnold does not project to be one guy. I think I agree with the Rosen projection of Jay Cutler, and that's more to do with him sort of mentally than arm talent-wise, but he does have talent. But for me, Sam Darnold he's Flacco's long ball with the potential to be Aaron Rodgers above the shoulders and be crafty like Rivers and have pocket awareness like Roethlisberger. And when you throw all that stuff together, I don't care if he doesn't play in 2018. You make that pick for what he's going to be, not for what he is. So I absolutely agree with you. If the move at 1, let's just say hypothetically, is it has to be quarterback, I agree with you, Rick. It has to be Sam Darnold.
You know, when you look at it, too, you had sort of questioned me a little bit the other day in terms of Tyrod Taylor, necessarily Auger, Baker Mayfield being the pick, being another smaller quarterback. And I said to you, I didn't think that was necessarily the case. There's an optimistic scenario here, which I'm not sure if I buy into or not, but it's occurred to me fairly recently, and that is Tyrod Taylor, again, he was a fairly polarizing quarterback in Buffalo. He's a guy who didn't make a lot of turnovers, but is it possible he could be a good influence on Sam Darnold? Just a thought.
I know the first conclusion most people are going to draw is that, and we kind of touched on this in the very beginning, if you're going to get a bridge quarterback, and that bridge quarterback doesn't look like your typical big pocket passer, and there happens to be a guy in the draft that is not your typical big pocket passer, people are going to draw that conclusion. They're going to say, well, John Dorsey got this guy specifically because they are similar to this. But to your point, it's an interesting dynamic that they could potentially be bringing someone who is not thought of necessarily as a running quarterback or a mobile quarterback, but because he's an efficient quarterback. And maybe at this point in Tyrod Taylor's career, he's been through enough and he's seen enough that he can pass something along that could help smooth that transition.
Well, we've seen a lot of one-year deal guys recently here. Isaiah Thomas, Dwayne Wade, Rose with the Cavs. There's a disincentive right there to sort of coach along younger players who are going to be poised to take your job. And as good of a guy as Taylor is, he is invested in, as any of us would be. I'm not saying that it's from selfishness. It's basic human interest. He's invested in trying to get his next contract. Mm-hmm. He'd be a dummy if he wasn't trying to do that. A pure caretaker along the lines of a Josh McCown, who I wish dearly they'd never let go of in the first place, that's the kind of guy that I kind of wish was here instead of Taylor. A Sam Bradford, perhaps. Somebody who at this point I think knows what he is, accepts what he is. Is Taylor at the right point in his career to be that? And I think people are getting excited next year because, yay, we might win 6 games instead of 3 or 4 games because we have Taylor. Does anybody really care about that, or should they?
Well, let me give you an answer. Apparently, the answer is yes. It should matter, because I don't know how many conversations I've had with people in this offseason in particular where, and you'll both really appreciate this, within the world of social media, at times when we get into these debates with people, you can leave words or you can do other things. And most recently, I actually posted a picture for anyone who has seen the remake of 21 Jump Street. Basically the scene where Ice Cube finds out that one of his employees is dipping his ladle in the wrong soup, so to speak. There's that typical Ice Cube, like, confused, angry look.
Right.
And I screenshot that, and then I created a meme out of it that basically says, as Browns fans, hey, we need a complete rebuild. We need to blow it up, start from scratch. That's what we need. And then the next line is, well, nobody told me we were going to lose. Okay, seriously. The rebuild is great. I'm all for it. I think everyone knows that I'm all for it. But I'm all for it in the and this is probably going to be even further from what Rick is saying in his own stance. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with going 0-16 or 1-15 or 2-14, as long as at some point at the conclusion of said rebuild, now we're talking 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I'm not okay with the typical Browns fan who is saying, let's make moves, i.e. what Rick just said, so that we can win a game, or so that we can win 3 or 4 games. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in making moves that makes this a respectable franchise again, that is consistently decent to good year in and year out. So yeah, I'm not in favor of that, but apparently plenty of Browns fans are just so tired of being, or the laughingstock of the league, that they are willing to get wins at no matter what the cost. So while I agree with you, Rick, that shouldn't matter, apparently it really does. But with that being said, I think 2 things are going to converge together here. I think you're absolutely right. This is an opportunity for Tyrod Taylor to set up that final contract. And here's the thing. If Tyrod Taylor comes to Cleveland, Jarvis Landry comes to Cleveland, Josh Gordon is God's gift to the world, and so on. If they end up winning even 6, 7 games and Darnold is ready to go, say start of 19, I would not be surprised one bit if Tyrod Taylor got traded to a team that was, again, in desperate need of a quarterback, maybe in a different kind of situation, where as soon as that trade is consummated, they start beginning to renegotiate to pay him more because, hey, he's the quarterback that pulled Cleveland out of the abyss. And if that's all he's got to go on, that's plenty. So that's an interesting dynamic there for what Tyrod Taylor can do for his future, depending on what happens in 2019. Now we're kind of getting up against it in time here, so let's push over into the running backs. We've talked about Barkley. I don't think we need to really hit on that. He is a perfect prospect, and I think we've covered that. So what I'd like to get into, and I'll just drop a couple names real quick, and then you feel free to take it from there. If Saquon Barkley is not someone you're going after for your team, and your team desperately needs a featured back, not by committee, not Thunder and Lightning, not Wildcat. If you want a bell cow, 20-plus touches a game, who's going to carry your team in that department, I personally like Nick Chubb. I do not like Sony Michel, and let that reverberate through the ethos of sports media and people lose their minds. But I don't like Sony Michel. I like Nick Chubb. He runs with intensity, and he is a, all-purpose, typical smash mouth runner that can do a little stuff in space. I love Rashad Penny out of San Diego State. I feel like he's sort of a poor man's Fournette. I really like Kalen Ballage from Arizona State. Alex, our Pac-12 consultant, is absolutely going to hate that I said that. Alex is an Arizona U guy and absolutely hates Arizona State, but Kalen Ballage is another one. He's sort of the poor man's poor man Fournette. He's not going to run around with a lot of guys, but he will run over and through them. So with those, and clearly, Rick, you know that I'm a big fan of one guy to do it all and all of that. So Nick Chubb, Rashad Penny, Kalen Ballage would be the guys I'd look at, and I'd even consider maybe a late-round flyer on a Bo Scarborough if you wanted, like, who's a kid in Tennessee? Big dude. Alabama. Little help here.
Yeah, there's some interesting backs out of the SEC there, and, you know, it's a thing where both of the Georgia backs are very interesting. Chubb is a guy where, and I'm sad to say this because that's another one of the guys I thought we'd be mentioning at the next level in the same breath as Elliott and Gurley, and maybe we still will, but I'm starting to wonder after his knee injury if he's ever going to be what we thought he was going to be beforehand, because he would have been a lock first rounder before that knee injury. You look at some of the prospects here. Ronald Jones II is somebody who is very interesting as well, coming out of USC with that offense there. And, again, a long line of great USC backs. We really haven't seen any of them that recently. The closest thing I think we'd seen to any great USC running backs recently was O.J. Simpson getting released from the pen, to be honest with you. But somebody I think Geis is a guy I think that is sort of the consensus number 2 pick, or has been, and whether he has a chance to be the consensus in the draft, I think the pro days are going to have a lot to say about that.
Look, running back to me this time around is pretty straightforward. You're either getting a sort of big lead guy, or you're getting someone who's a complement. And to be honest with you, I think the better way to go for any team looking at running back is to get the bigger guys. This is a good, deep draft of big guys. Now, I got to say, some of this is lack of sample size. Some of it is the sample size I saw I'm really not impressed with. So one thing that does confuse me, especially if you've been following the SEC, is the consensus seems to be Barkley is going in the top 2, period. And if it's not to Cleveland, it's going to be to the Giants. And you and I have talked about maybe it is going to Cleveland at 2, and that's a whole other conversation if we have time we'll get into. But for me, if you're looking at this, I don't see a Duke Johnson. I don't see a Danny Whitehead. I don't see a complimentary back. I think you're going to see guys that look like that, like a Sony Michel that looks like they could rush the ball as well as they can catch it. I just don't think that this is the draft you do that in. So the one SEC thing that jumps out at me is the idea that Barkley goes high, and then there's no other running back taken in the first round unless your name is Geis. Kid from LSU, very similar in size to Saquon Barkley, a little bit lighter in the pants. I'm just, when I watch Barkley, I'm blown away. He jumps off the screen. When I watch Geis, it's like, okay, yeah, he's a good running back, but nothing about him surprises me, and nothing about him tells me that he should be going in the middle of the first round. So moving on from the running backs, and we already touched on some of the wide receivers. At this point, I'm just going to sort of open that up to you, Rick, to see if there's somebody you want to touch on that we haven't. We mentioned Courtland Sutton, who at one point in my evaluation, I thought he was going to be a top 15 pick. You've got Ridley from Alabama, who absolutely looks like one of those typical all-around complete backs, or complete wide receivers. He catches short stuff, intermediate stuff, deep, whatever. You can put him in the slot. He blocks. All that stuff's great. It's the frame that concerns me. If you could tell me I'm getting all that in 6'3", 220, I like it a little bit more. And then to me, Equinemius St. Brown is probably number 3. DJ Chalk is number 4. And then somewhere in there you're going to mix in DJ Moore. The Kirk from, Texas A&M. But yeah, I think once you get out of the first round, if you're not taking a wide receiver in the first round, I think it is a veritable smorgasbord of wide receiver gold in the second round. And that brings us into a different sort of subset of that wide receiver group where you're going to find a lot of guys in that 6 foot to 6'2" range that were very productive, like Deion Kane, like a Deontay Burnett from USC, who again he's not a deep threat guy, but if you're needing a slot, he's very solid. And then you got guys like Michael Gallup from Colorado State, who's a little bit bigger, but still fits into that I don't think he's got take the top off the defense capability, but the guy can be a very productive wide receiver. So I think there is something to be said for that third and fourth round where you can get guys that might even be able to step in year one and be productive. Whether they're going to be 90 catch, 1,400 yard, 10 touchdown guys, that's a whole different conversation.
True. And I think that's the thing. This is a draft, again, you look at stats of recent years, 2014 most of all, that was franchise players in there galore. This is one, you get a lot of guys who will be number one on a lesser team, or two on a pretty good team. This is a good draft day. It doesn't have the high-end freak guys in the much, but depth is certainly the word of the day crop.
Now, we could spend some time talking about defensive tackle, but that particular position for me is very, very black and white, very cut and dry. Vita Vea is probably the number one defensive tackle in the draft, and with a name like that, don't be surprised when I tell you that he is Samoan and plays for the Washington Huskies. Now, we saw recently that the Cleveland Browns, who also had a defensive tackle who is Samoan, who played for Washington, got traded away to New England for what we hear is a third-round pick, but in all reality is really a fourth-round pick. And that is that he's nice. Yep. He is what he is. And I'm going to use a phrase that really is probably going to make Rick's skin crawl. Vita Vea, while probably a hair better than Danny Shelton on the agility side of things, they are both the same thing. They are a big body that eats up 2 blocks. Feel free to vomit in your mouth.
As far as people getting morons in the Cleveland media who will do this, as they did with Danny Shelton back in the day, the old quiet storm at the turn of the sixth. But he plays up 2 blockers. Been drafted highly to do. And again, find a high pick on a defensive tackle. That would be one of the things that they could do. Create a hole, fill a hole. They traded Danny Shelton.
So, in addition to Vita Vea, the next Danny Shelton, and I should point out that for those of you who agree with us, that the idea that a guy is just there to eat up 2 blocks is not willing to put him in that top 10 to top 15 range. Danny Shelton taken at 12. Vita Vea projected to go in the late 20s.
Right.
So maybe the NFL at least is coming around to this idea that we need our defensive tackles to do more. We need more of the Fletcher Coxes of the world. So with that, there's really not a lot with defensive tackle. There's value there. Deron Payne from Alabama showed that he's a lot more agile than we thought he was. So again, combine is a tool to confirm or to reassess if we need to go back and take another look. Maybe Deron Payne is not just a eat up 2 blockers kind of guy. We also have I like this kid Nandi from Florida State, but he's definitely a day 2 at the earliest kind of pick. So defensive tackle is definitely not a sexy area, so we'll just leave it at that. Those are the big names we'll be worried about in the first, say, 50 picks. But moving away from that and getting into the sexy side of it, edge rushers. There are quite a few of them. I have one guy at the very top that I'm way more excited about than most people. And then we've got some other guys that are projects, but I think are going to be fine. For me, the big name out there that no one's really talking about to the length that they should, unless you're talking to Bucky Brooks or Daniel Jeremiah of the NFL Network, is a little guy I like to call Baby Vaughn. His name is Tremaine Edmonds. He is a 4'3" prototype outside linebacker out of Virginia Tech. He's 6'5", 250 pounds, very long, very quick, very fast and long speed. And as Mike Mayock pointed out this week, he doesn't even know how to play football yet. And he will probably go somewhere in the top 10 to top 15. It would absolutely be a sport equivalent wet dream if he were to fall into the 20s, and then I would be jumping up and down in my living room floor demanding that the Browns trade up to go get him. After that, we've got Marcus Davenport, who is another one of these guys that tells the rest of the world, yeah, look at the combine. You need to go watch this kid on tape. I don't know where he fits yet. He looks more like a big defensive end that's going to try to convert to a 3-4 outside linebacker. Some are saying that Roquan Smith might be just as good weak side outside as he would be on the inside. And then we've got this kid from Boise State whose name I can't even pronounce yet. But we've got probably somewhere in the ballpark of about 6 or 7 instant starters at the edge rusher position, regardless of scheme, in the first 50 picks. Well, and Bradley Chubb enters into a nice little psychological thing that just happened. With picks 1 and 4, my brain is automatically going to default to the things that are actually on the table. And despite what some fans think, I just think that Bradley Chubb is not in play for either 1 or 4. I think he's a lock to go to 3 or wherever Indianapolis is picking, as long as it's in, say, the top 6. Bradley Chubb, the rub on him is that he is as good a pass rusher as there is in this draft. My concern is that we're doing that thing again where we are saying he's the best in this draft and therefore he must be equally as good as all the others who were best in their draft. I don't think he's even Myles Garrett, to be honest with you, and that's not a bias. That's just that Myles Garrett brings a skill set. He came into the league with multiple moves. My personal experience watching Bradley Chubb is that while he is an absolute beast at the bull rush, I don't know that he has anything else. I think he's another one of these guys that just overpowers everybody. And he does well with good technique, and he is a very good athlete. But when you're looking at a team, again, bring it back to the Browns, when you're talking about a team that's picking 1 and 4 and has Myles Garrett, Emmanuel Ogbah, and I almost called it brother, Carl Nassib, you have a 3-man rotation for 2 spots already. Why are you going to waste a top 5 pick on a guy that's not better than the guy you got last year? So, Freudian slip, whatever it may be, completely omitted Bradley Chubb because I automatically have penciled him into Indianapolis.
I think, again, there's just a couple of questions about him that you're not seeing a lot of other people vocalizing have any questions. That's where, again, and I'm not denying that he is a great athlete. I think you put your finger on it perfectly. Sure, of this year is that automatically put him on a level with the best of drafts. And I think that's what we need to be looking at.
All right, well, we're going to get one last segment here with Rick in a moment, where we're going to go into the defensive secondary, only because it is fairly deep. Lots of stuff to get into with that, especially with the intrigue at the top of the draft. I have a very strong take on a certain player that everyone else in the world seems to think is, the football god's gift to whatever, and I'm going to contradict that here, and I'll let Rick respond.
Okay, somebody get me Tom Michaels on the phone.
Tell me you didn't just do that, Sonny. Let me get this straight. In the span of one day, you have managed to burn through 3 years' worth of number 1 and number 2 picks. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I quit, Sonny.
Don't quit.
I can't coach a team that doesn't have a future, Sonny. That's the way it works.
I got Tom Michaels on the line.
Sonny, are we trading 6?
Will everyone please just shut up? Don't quit. Huh? Just let me do my job. Don't quit now. If by the end of the night you still want to quit, then quit. Just see what I do for you.
Your show.
Tom, it's Sonny.
Jesus, Mary and whatnot. Do I owe you a thank you, Weaver?
Thank you.
Jacksonville's on the clock, and I'm one more crazy shit show from insanity. Lord God, let that infant John Carson screw this up.
It's Jeff Carson, Tom, and he doesn't have the pick. I do. I just made a trade with Jacksonville. I'm on the clock. It's me.
Bullshit.
The Jacksonville Jaguars have made a trade. The Cleveland Browns now have the 6th pick and are on the clock.
I'm going to pick Bo, Tom, unless you want him more, and if so, let's make a deal.
We still have Bo Callahan?
All right, you've done your due diligence. You're about to pull off the move of the century, but you need my pick to do it, so make me an offer. Make me a deal, Tom, at 6. You get your boy Wonder.
What do you want?
I want my number 1s back, all of them.
That's crazy. Why would I give them back?
Because at the end of the day, no one's the wiser, Tom. You haven't lost anything, and you get the quarterback messiah you've always wanted for $7 million less.
You take him. You obviously don't want to. I'll stick with my draft pick.
Yeah, but you want him, Tom, don't you? Seahawks fans want a hero, and you denied him.
Not that bad.
Don't lie to me. Ever since you traded away Callahan, the barbarians are at the gate.
I don't care about that.
Yeah, you do. You and I both know it. I have the golden ticket now, Tom, and if I give it to you, you get to save Seahawk football in Seattle.
Give you number 2 picks.
No. No, I want my picks back, all of them. I want all 3 years of this team's future back.
That's not fair.
Well, you want to cry about it, Tom, or you want to make a little magic before the clock runs out on both of us? Okay, screw it. No more offer. It's off the table, Tom. I'm taking Callahan.
Whoa, no. Wait. All right, you have a deal. Give me your picks. We have a deal.
What else do we need?
Special teams. Putney. Get Putney.
Yes. David Putney. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that deal's now off the table.
What?
We live in a different world than we did just 30 seconds ago.
What do you want now?
I want my picks back, and I want David Putney.
Where the hell that come from?
It doesn't matter. I want all my picks back, and I want David goddamn Putney just because I feel like it.
You're out of your mind.
Yeah, I am. Haven't I proved that already? You make this deal right now, Tom, and you get Bo Callahan. Say it with me. Come on, Tom, say it with me, you pancake-eating motherfucker.
All right, shit. Deal.
And welcome back to G&H's Combine Review Show. We've made our way through the quarterback, running back, wide receiver, defensive line, and edge rusher groups, which leaves us with maybe the most intriguing group of this draft, which is the defensive secondary. Now, in case you're not paying attention, here are the cliff notes. There are 2 safeties at the top. One, 99.9% of the world believe is all-world, game-changing, elite, can't-miss prospect. I'm not one of those people. And then you've got another guy who I think is exactly what I just described, but has a different name. Of the corners, there are 2 guys at the top. One of them is falling, and that makes me very happy. But the guy at the top who will be the guy at the top and will continue to be the guy at the top is Denzel Ward of Ohio State, who ran a 4.32 40, and is widely considered to have the best cover skills of any corner, regardless of that 40 time. That being said, let me just throw this out there right now. We mentioned Sherman at the top of the draft being the reason why people like big corners, and I, as the fan of a team that I'm the fan of, am tired of small corners. I don't care if Denzel Ward is Darrelle Revis reincarnate. I don't want a single corner under 6 foot. That being said, that gets us to number 2, which is Josh Jackson of Iowa, who led FBS in interceptions. Now, he may be a ball hawk, or maybe he's just a guy that's in the right place at the right time. He did not run a very good 40. It was in the high 4.4s, low 4.5s, and he is starting to slide down boards a little bit. And the reason for that is if Ward is at the top, the next guy not named Josh Jackson is probably going in the top half of the second round. So if Josh Jackson just is a right place, right time guy, maybe he's not worth going to the top 10. So he's falling a little bit. Jair Alexander out of Louisville made himself some money in the combine by showing that his cover skills are only matched by his athleticism. And then we've got a plethora of big guys. Carlton Davis, Tavares McFadden, who might have had the second worst combine to only Orlando Brown. So he'll fall a little bit. So if you like corners, if you need corners, and in my particular case, the Browns definitely need corners, I think any team out there could possibly get 2 starting caliber corners in the draft and not have to spend a first-round pick doing it. Another guy I really like, and feel free to point out bias if you'd like, is J.C. Jackson out of Maryland. 6'1", I think 6'1", 220. Really good, talented player. Got into a little bit of trouble off the field, but the good news is that he was acquitted of all of that stuff. So, that being said, getting into my Minkah Fitzpatrick thing. I do not believe that he is the end-all, be it to the free safety position, and that's because I don't even know if he's going to play free safety. As far as the tape goes, I watched the tape. Yes, he's a good player. He is a very good at everything, excellent at nothing kind of guy. He's got a good football IQ. He's got decent athleticism. But to me, he just looks like a good safety at a good program. He does not jump off the screen to me. Derwin James, however, jumps off the screen. Derwin James is 6'3", 218 pounds or something like that. He ran exactly 1/100th of a second slower than Minkah Fitzpatrick. And when we look at the production, they are virtually the same down the line with the exception of tackles, where Derwin James literally is twice the player that Fitzpatrick is. So, as Cleveland needs a free safety, assuming that the corner from Green Bay doesn't transition over to free safety, which we're hearing a little buzz about today, I really think that if they're going to go free safety, it's got to be Derwin James. But like I said, I am almost in a group of one when it comes to that, for what I can tell.
Well, make that a group of two, because I would take James over Fitzpatrick. You've sold me on this, and I think, again, with Fitzpatrick, it's the projection here of what he can be. Again, as somebody who got moved around a decent amount in that defense, but is this somebody who is going to be a cornerback? Is he going to be best used at cornerback, whether it be in the slot or on the outside or at free safety? Versus, you don't have to project anything with Derwin James. He's a free safety. You see what he is and what he can do. And one of the very valuable pieces in the NFL, as we've seen over a period of time, is certainly in the last generation, somebody a lot like an Ed Reed. But essentially anybody that can be out there in center field and really being, a term that I like to use in a lot of different ways, is a force multiplier. And that's the kind of thing that I thought Clinton Dix was potentially going to do when he went to Green Bay. And we saw it for one game against Seattle in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago, the one where Seattle almost got beat at home. He was in that game, he showed what he can be, and he hasn't shown enough of that other times there. But that's one of these things that, again, like in the military parlance of force multiplying and making everyone else around you better and more effective, versus Fitzpatrick. I'm going to give this to you, Jason, in terms of, I'm going to go back to Lindy's again. What they like best about him is his intangibles. He comes with off the charts grades in toughness, leadership, and dedication. To which I say, does that merit a top 5 overall pick? I think not. Party of two, Jason, on Derwin James over Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Well, and look, I don't want to discredit the kid. Clearly, he's one of these leadership guys. He's the guy that's going to come into the locker room right away. His presence will be felt. He'll be respectful but forceful. It'll be all about getting on top of it, being in the film room, really being prepared, and all that's great. But when it comes down to it, the draft is a fickle mistress, and the fact of the matter is I am not taking a slot corner, and I don't care how good he is, in the top 10.
Right.
I'm just not doing that. And if you're telling me that he's all these things, except ultimately he's going to play slot corner because he likes to blitz, yeah, then let somebody else pick him. When it comes to free safety, especially on a team like the Browns that are looking to get one early, or even, maybe a Tampa Bay, who seem to be sort of the safety equivalent of the Browns at quarterback over there, if they're going to do it, let them do it, because he's a good football player. He'll make an impact. I just don't think it's worth that kind of draft capital. Now, Rick, if we could transition ever so slightly.
Sure.
Because you are in the hotbed of Ohio State country, I want to get a straightforward analysis of someone I know that actually watches the games and knows what they're looking for. Is the draft projection that Denzel Ward is likely to go in the top 10, is that market value? Is that us bumping him, assuming he's better than he is? Or is someone going to get an actual value pick if he's taken in the top 10?
I think it kind of depends on how you look at it, and I'm looking at it the same way that you are, which I think is the accurate way to look at it. Versus, again, you have to look at what is the value of a slot corner. And I'm not saying that's necessarily his ceiling. I'm not saying you can't put him on the outside, but to go back to your previous point about him, 5'10", 191 was what he was projected projected at least at one point in his measurements, I should say measured instead of projected. But in looking at that again, this is one of these things where, granted, not every quarterback can make the over-the-shoulder throws, but you're taking that off the table in terms of your ability to defend against that. And that is what has given sort of a second breath to the career of somebody like a DRC in the pros, the bigger cornerbacks out there. Seattle with the Legion of Boom, they were kind of showing it a couple of years ago on what the bigger cornerbacks can do to be disruptive. So somebody like a Ward, you can take him, you can project him, top 10, top 15. He could very well go in there. But I think, again, that would be teams getting sort of blinded by the physical upside and the tools that he has, and not looking enough at a real-world projectability kind of a thing where, you can't take him and put him on a Mike Evans, for example. Right. So if you can't do that, why are you going to spend a top 10 or 15 pick on him?
Well, and I think that is really my hesitation on it. Look, it's not like I don't like Ohio State players. I do, as long as they're not quarterbacks. I do like Ohio State players. I think they crank out NFL talent left and right. If I'm taking corner in the top 10, and as a team that just recently traded away Joe Hayden, who was taken in the top 10, I'd like to remind everyone that if you take a corner in the top 10, it better be Darrelle Revis, it better be Patrick Peterson, it better be someone that tests well and has tape to follow. If he's one of these guys that's going to be great at something but isn't a jack of all trades in that regard, then I'm probably not excited to take him in the top 10. Now, you mentioned something interesting with the slot side of things, the big corners and slot. If we go away from the number one guy, it's safe to assume, short of Jair Alexander, every other corner that will be taken in the top 10 of corners are all big, which presents an interesting question because there was a guy that I would have, before the Combine, considered taking maybe in the back end of the first round, and that is Tavares McFadden out of Florida State. Tavares McFadden is a solid 6'2", 220 pounds and change. And the thing is, when you watch him on tape, if I want a slot corner, that's who I want. I want someone that on tape plays and gets after it. Here's the thing. He ran almost a 4.6 40. So even at that size and even at that sort of niche position, I really don't think he's going to go anywhere near the first round. So if the idea is Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to be your slot corner and he's going to be great, I would still rather you take Denzel Ward or trade down and go some other way and maybe get a Carlton Davis or Jair Alexander, who's also only 5'10", and then go and get a guy like Tavares McFadden who can get in there and can defend at least the short to intermediate stuff for a Mike Evans or a big body wide receiver, or even could potentially in sub packages handle tight ends. But the thing is with that one, value. I'm not taking him at 4.6. I'm not taking that guy in the first two rounds. So again, defensive secondary has options. Now, the question is, the Browns are not alone in being a team that would like to get two starting corners. So Rick, you're just shooting from the hip. Your impression within the feasibility of being able to draft, and this isn't fantasy, so I'm not saying you get to pick 33 and 34, but if you can pick two guys in the second, third, and fourth rounds, do you feel like those are going to be potential starters, contributors, or depth if you're trying to get two of them?
I think potential starters. I think you can sort of set your expectations accordingly. And somebody like Tavares McFadden, I want to touch upon him for a little bit because I think he's sort of an interesting microcosm of one of the subsets of this whole player development process, something that's kind of a conundrum here. A guy whose 2017 wasn't nearly as good as his 2016, much like the man that I have a man crush on, Sam Darnold, as we discussed before. And this is one of these things where it becomes a sort of a tough matter to discern here on, is this somebody getting exposed the second year, that he's sort of been figured out, or is it simply didn't have a great year, may have stalled in the development of his game? In the case of McFadden, as you said, didn't test very well, here. So, again, maybe the fitness wasn't necessarily the best relative to what it was in 2016. Now, that could lead to other questions as well, as we said, in terms of Orlando Brown. Like, if your fitness wasn't good coming into the combine, what the hell's wrong with you? Is this going to be a concern? Need we be thinking about, is this guy going to be having the dedication to stay up with his craft? So trying to figure out when a guy falls off the year that he comes out as opposed to what he was the year before, that's one of the most difficult puzzles that we face here. I look at the upside of 2016, though, and again, you have to be confident about your situation. And the one thing, and again, much like all good football fans everywhere, I'm not a fan of the New England Patriots, but you got to give the devil their due in terms of organizational know-how, things that they do. Belichick's always got an eye for guys who have a rap but may not be as bad of a person as what the rap says, if that makes any kind of a sense here. People who may have a bad rap but are coachable and adaptable in their circumstances. If you're very comfortable with what you have, and that you have a system where you can demand the most out of him, and I actually don't know if the Browns have that right now. So I'm not advocating for the Browns to take him because it's an open question on what they have in terms of the coaching there right now. Greg Williams is a genius, but he's also a Billy Martin type. And he burns out very quickly in the different jobs here, so that would be my sort of concern. Also, Greg Williams sort of engaged in a little bit of throwing the players under the bus, not to the degree that Hugh Jackson did with his disgraceful kind of crap that should have gotten fired late in the season, where he was more or less complaining about what he had to work with. But again, I'm not sure the Browns are the team. I'm not sure they have the solidity to take a chance on McFadden, because I'm not sure their team can get the most out of him. But if you're a team that is in that position and you have that confidence, boy, that guy could pay off for you.
Well, and this brings up another interesting point. Maybe, when you're looking at a team that doesn't have the greatest track record of developing players, that if you're a fan of one of those other teams, from Patriots down into, say, as we approach the bottom third, if you are the Packers, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Seahawks, the Rams even, believe it or not, we're saying that, then yeah, maybe this is one of those things where you can look into McFadden and say, that's that piece of our secondary that solidifies everything, gives us a little flexibility, and we can work with them. But I agree with you, as much as it pains me to say, when it comes to teams like the Browns, the Jaguars, the Lions, the Bills even, while two of those teams I just mentioned were in the playoffs, they aren't exactly known for developing players, and if you're a fan of those teams, you're probably less likely to be excited about someone that you have to trust your front office, coaching, and developmental departments are going to be able to get them right where they need to be. And yeah, for those of us on the brown and orange side, yeah, not crazy about that.
Well, Jason, let me put this to you as far as McFadden goes. Could there be a better spot for him right now than the Broncos? You look at the new starters that they have at cornerback, Wade Phillips as defensive coordinator. Is there a better landing spot anywhere in the league for a guy like that right now? I don't think so.
Well, probably not. They've committed to Chris Harris Jr., who, believe it or not, he's not a household name, but according to Football Focus, has been the most efficient cornerback in the last 5 years. So he's there. They did move to Talib. They are going to pull, what's his face? The corner from Ohio State.
Yeah, I know you're talking about that. I know Tremaine Johnson's going to be going, but they have replaced him.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's that spot to get that third corner or your nickel corner, slot corner. So, yeah, it would absolutely be a good spot. And after Denver, wets the bed on Kirk Cousins and reaches for a quarterback that they probably don't like, then maybe by the time they get into the second and third round, that would be a very exciting option. Now, we're going to try something here real quick because I just want to hear Rick's reaction. Rick and I spoke at length about a number of subjects last night just for the fun of it, and this was not one of them. And I don't know if Ricardo even knows about this, so we're going to see if this is going to work, and I'm looking for unsolicited reaction.
What I'm saying, Fitzpatrick and a guy like Derwin James, they don't need nobody to be successful. They're going to be successful no matter what situation you place them in.
Troy Ashley.
Oh, man, he can run.
Why are you surprised, Dan?
Oh, you know why I'm surprised? I can't say it on TV, but he...
Okay, so for those that didn't watch the all the way through to the middle of the defensive backs, there is a marginally talented safety out of Penn State. I'm going to butcher his name, but all I know is Troy Apke, I believe is what it is. And for those watching at home that don't have the luxury to see what we just saw, he's white. And he ran a 3.5. And look, let's cut through it. Let's call it what this is. Mike Mayock is a very respectable analyst. Bucky Brooks is a former scout who I would march into the fires of hell if he told me to. Daniel Jeremiah was a scout for the Baltimore Ravens. These are men that go into the combine not well versed, but familiar with everyone they're going to look at. There's not a name they mispronounce. There's not a name where they go, yeah, I got nothing. Right. They go in knowing a little bit, if not a lot, about everyone that's in the combine. Deion Sanders is NFL royalty, and Deion Sanders is not going to put a whole lot of work into anything. Deion Sanders, in his time as a broadcaster, has never come across as being some guy that's doing his own homework. And I'm not giving the guy any grief. I'm just saying, don't be surprised when he sees somebody he's not familiar with or didn't know that Troy Apke comes from a track background and absolutely was going to run fast. But look, in this world we live in race relations being what they are and people choosing to get upset about anything, let me say this right now. If you saw that and treat it as anything other than television comedy, then you need to reassess your whole life. That is just good fun, and I don't care. A white guy who's not fast, love it. There's a white guy that's fast. So what? The last time we had one of these, his name was Jason Sehorn, who had a very solid career. But so what? He's good at a few things. Maybe he's a solid safety. I'll be honest, I have not seen a lot of tape on him. I've heard that he's really good at covering tight ends, to whatever that's worth. But I just thought that it was a nice little way to put a bow on the whole combine, to see Deion Sanders almost laughing at the idea that he was unaware that there was a white guy that could run sub 4.4s.
Well, Jason, I'll tell you what, man. It's one of these things where this is something that's common across sports. The sports royalty part of the broadcasting booth here, guys who are like the megastars, Hall of Famers at their position, they're the ones, quite frankly, that coast the most on stuff here because they know that they can. They're not there for their preparation. They're not there to sort of, get deep into the X's and O's. I mean, all you got to do is, when it comes time, we're almost there for March Madness. Look at Barkley in the studio. When he's asked to comment on college guys that he's never heard of, like the power forward for the South Carolina team is terrible. That guy was just bricking shots left and right. Like, Barkley broadcasts to you blatantly that he doesn't know and doesn't care what he's talking about. So this is just sort of par for the course with the superstar players turning broadcasters, Jason.
Well, and I am very passionate about what I'm about to say. And those that know me will understand why, especially if, like, Rick and Ricardo and Damon later can attest to, as they've been in those trenches with me. I have a big problem with professional athletes who have played their career, are worth millions, and decide, hey, I'm going to go talk about it for a living.
Jay Cutler. None
of these people we're talking about, I assure you, ran through the alphabet with a pencil between their teeth. I guarantee you none of them stood up in front of a chroma key and did the, pressure system coming in from the... No. None of them have done that, and when they go in there and they half-ass it, it is offensive to me, and it's offensive to anyone else who's been through the rigors of what it takes to get to that point. And I'm calling you out, Alfred Williams. Get used to it right now. You heard it here first. Anytime you say something stupid, I'm going to come after you. Because Alfred Williams is probably the worst offender of all of them. He didn't even attempt to fix his non-regional diction, but we'll get past that. This is going way too far down the nerdy broadcaster role. But yeah, let's be honest. I love LaDainian Tomlinson. From our fantasy background, when we get into fantasy sports, LaDainian Tomlinson, I even said on a show with you, Rick, years ago, that LaDainian Tomlinson is the first overall pick in fantasy football until further notice. So he's got a special place in my heart. He's a horrible broadcaster. Darren Sharper, before they put him in prison, he was a horrible broadcaster. You know what I have a lot of respect for? And this is going to sound like it's race-driven, but it's not. When Troy Aikman retired and when Kurt Warner retired, there was a period of time where they were just missing. No one knew where they were. No one heard anything. And then all of a sudden, Troy Aikman's going to do, the NFC play-by-play or color analyst for the broadcast. And then you go, okay, great, here we go. Another star athlete is going to try his hand. It's basically like basketball players trying to be rappers. Like, pick one. Not everybody's good at everything. But Troy Aikman was very good. Tony Romo, surprisingly, is very good.
To say Romo, yeah.
And then, you get guys like Kurt Warner who are very solid. There is a guy Charles Davis of NFL Network. Phenomenal. Now, he's not a star player. He had a career in the NFL.
Jeff Saturday.
Jeff Saturday's not bad. Our own Marshall Erith out here is also not bad. Yep. But the commonality is all of them, regardless of what level of sport they were good at, they all devoted themselves to the craft, and you can tell when you watch them. So that being said, that's me doing my whole get off my lawn thing. But so with that being said, Rick, we've talked about the draft, talked about the combine specifically, highlighted a fair number of players, and now I'm going to do something really quick, and I'm not giving you any notice, and I just want you to shoot from the hip here. Okay, I'm just going to run through a quick. We'll see if I get to 10. I might not be able to get to 10. We'll do at least the top 5. Right now, the draft happens today. Knowing what you know today, and I'm going to steal your thunder a little bit, Rick, because you proposed an idea last night that I'm all for, and at this point, I almost don't even care what it takes to make it happen. I think it'll only take 35, but Cleveland, at 1, takes Sam Darnold, and they don't hesitate. They won't sit on the clock for very long. Then they will have traded 4-2 with New York, and using Rick's own words against him, they're going to go to the Giants and say, we are taking Barkley at 1, so just get over it. We are not. There's no chance you're going to get him. So now that you know that, we want to secure our quarterback, which will then make them go, sure, okay, give us 35 overall. We'll give you 2, and we'll drop down to 4. Not a whole lot moves.
I think it'll take 2 twos, by the way.
Oh, that'll make me a little upset. But okay, if it's 35 and 64, I can at least be convinced. So they will actually make that trade before the draft starts, and they will go just to piss the Giants off. They'll go Darnold 1, Barkley 2. Bradley Chubb, the number 1 edge rusher out of North Carolina State, will go to Indianapolis because they have no kind of pass rush. Which brings us back to the Giants at 4. Giants have an atrocious offensive line. I don't think that the fans of the Giants are going to love this, but as of right now, unless something changes, I don't see anything between 4 through 6 that is not a quarterback that they're going to want. And here's a newsflash for you. The typical narrative is the Giants are going to take Rosen because they want the heir apparent to Eli Manning. Yet I go back to week 16, I think it was, when their half-ass of a coach decided to bench Eli in favor of a backup nobody gives a damn about in the effort to save his job. And here's the fun part. The front office and ownership said, okay, tread lightly. This is Eli Manning we're talking about. Right. Don't do something stupid. He did something stupid. The very next day, he was fired. The ownership has recommitted to Eli Manning. My theory is that they are not going to go quarterback at all, or they're not going to go quarterback early because they're going to try to do things to maximize the time they have left with Eli as they've recommitted to him. So I think they're going to go Quentin Nelson if it happens today, the offensive guard from Notre Dame. At 5, and here, since we're talking trades, this is where Denver is getting very frustrated because this entire time they've been fighting tooth and nail to get up into, the 2 or 3 range because I think there's a quarterback that they like. I don't necessarily think it's the quarterback that I'm going to give them, but at 5, knowing that they couldn't trade up, not that they needed to anyway in this scenario, I think John Elway is going to take the guy that's most ready, even if he's not the best prospect, and take Josh Rosen just to see if he can win before he walks away. And then at 6, we've got the Jets, who are either going to take Allen or Mayfield. I'm going to say it's the New York Jets being the New York Jets, and they're going to take Mayfield, which brings us to Tampa Bay, who I think probably takes Minkah Fitzpatrick at that point and is happy to do so. 8 is San Francisco. I think that's where probably Denzel Ward goes, just so they can lock up that back end and start to fill in the gaps. And then last, Oakland Raiders at 10. I think they're going to probably reach and take someone like Roquan Smith from Georgia. So if you can, Rick, give me at least a top 5 as you see it if it happened today.
Top 5, I think the Browns in the top spot here. I think it's a little bit of a smoke screen. Maybe this is optimism here, but I'm going to say Darnold at 1. I think Barkley at 2 to the Giants. The Colts are going to get a lot of trade offers, but I think it could be persuasive that they stay with Chubb at 3. You get to 4 with the Browns. They're going to be getting a lot of trade offers there, but I'm just going to go chalk that they take Minkah Fitzpatrick, whether you and I like it or not. In that spot, I'll say Denver taking Josh Rosen at 5. And as we're sort of going full circle on this thing here, Jason, and everything we've talked about today, I'll just say that an admonition to all teams in the draft process is that there's a fine line between being clever and between being ill-advised, as perhaps I potentially crossed that line in harshing on Charles Barkley before, and thus potentially ending the string of Ernie Johnson appearances on the FDA's lounge. So that may prove to be my bad.
Well, we will do what we can to make sure that only gets to those that want to see it. Hey, would not be the first time, right? At some point in our process, we'll bring Rick back so that he and I can share with you the story as to why Matthew Berry, ESPN's lead fantasy football analyst, is afraid of me. At some point, we'll get to that. So, Rick, I definitely want to thank you for coming on. We did have a little bit of audio issues. We'll clean that up next time, and then we will get what we can out. We'll disperse that out to the various social media and websites that we are in partnership with. And then, Rick, unless something comes up before then, I've got you penciled in to be a part of our live draft coverage when the NFL draft comes around. And then, of course, we've got the NBA draft as well. Rick, the proprietor of FDH Fantasy Draft Help and all of its subsidiaries, we appreciate you for coming on, and we will continue to bring you on and continue to promote the product.
Well, Jason, I thank you very much. It's very exciting to be here as part of your new project. And again, you have had a lot to do with the building of the FDH Lounge at FantasyDraftHelp.com as my partner, as our senior editor, and I look forward to working together, these entities, as we move forward here. Very exciting. You've got a very talented crew of people that you're working with out there, and I look forward to all the intersections to come. Very exciting times, my friend.
All right. Well, Rick Morris, the Fantasy Draft Help and the FDH Lounge will be continuing to promote that stuff, and I guarantee you it'll be some of the most entertaining consumption that you have. So, Rick, I do appreciate it, and we will talk to you soon.
Rich Eisen, University of Michigan, 6 foot, 198. And when I look at Rich, what I see is a guy that's going to give everything. I'm going to tell you right now, he's got no short area quickness. He can't get out of the blocks. He's probably going to run somewhere between 5.97 and 6.10. That's kind of the sweet spot for Rich Eisen.
Rich Eisen, Michigan.
Come on, Rich, come on. All the way through. All the way through.
I think he's going to like you.
Yeah, show him yours, man.
5.98.
Bailey had you at 5.98.
I'm
so proud of you, man.
Are you?
You know, that's the best form that you ever displayed.
Is that right? You think so?
No, it was. The way you came out, I mean, you changed your form like 3 or 4 times within the race, but the start, Rich, I'm proud of you, man.
See, I love how you say that I changed it, but I don't
see your hands are open, then your hands are closed.
Oh, okay.
Then you
This is not going to be pretty super slow-mo.
See, watch how you come out low and watch your hands. See, Rich, that's the best you've ever looked.
Okay.
Look where they're coming up to. I love it. What was that?
It was 5.968 to round up to 5.97.
But it looked like Mike was disappointed.
He was, because Mike's.
I'm just going to tell you guys, I'm the world's probably last honest man, and I'm going to leave it like that.
There you go.
He timed it over 6.
World's last honest man.
5.97.
All right, welcome back to G&H's Combine coverage. We have covered all of the position groups, if you're just joining us, and we have gone into some of the particulars about some of the tendencies, strategies, thoughts, narratives. And what I want to do real quick is, as a relative talent evaluator, draftnik, whatever you want to call it, there are things you pick up over time. There are tendencies, practices, strategies, things that at this point in the process are pretty much accepted as common knowledge. There are other things accepted as common knowledge that are absolute bullshit. And I'm really getting tired of hearing about that. So that to help combat me having to take time to explain very simple concepts to people that just don't understand, this is me pulling a Jeff Daniels from Newsroom saying, I'm on a mission to civilize. It is my job at some point, at some extension, to say, listen, here's what's what, and this is not, and it's not me saying it, this is years and years of things happening. Right. It just is the way. Get used to it. And we'll start with draft picks are currency. Accept it. Draft picks are not to be thrown around willy-nilly. So when I hear something like Earl Thomas, who was drafted relatively high and is a great safety. Yeah. Some believe that since Seattle has said he's on the trading block, that potentially maybe he's on the verge in that sort of New England Patriot way of let's shed the excess before it becomes excess. There's a possibility that Earl Thomas might be on the way down. Let's assume he's not. I heard this yesterday. Let's assume that Earl Thomas is every bit the player you think he still is, and that if you need a free safety, that you could get him fixed, done, end of story. I'm telling you right now, because of the one full round appreciation, look it up, Google the shit. There is a full one round appreciation on every single trade that ever happens involving veteran players, at least in the last 20 years. Greatest point I can give you, Randy Moss, who fell, but still drafted in the top half of the first round. In his prime, traded from the Oakland Raiders to the New England Patriots for a 4th round pick. Aqib Talib, drafted in the 2nd round, gets traded this last week to San Francisco for a 5th round pick. Jarvis Landry, who went in the top 50, went for essentially a 4th round pick and a 7th round pick. So nobody gets practical value for a trade. And I don't give a damn who it is. The only exception, top 5 quarterback, top 3 wide receiver, top 2 defensive back, top 3 pass rusher in the NFL. So, if the name you're chasing is not Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, or let's throw Russell Wilson. Come on, Kaepernick. The Colin Kaepernick thing is not going away anytime soon.
He depreciates too.
So those 5 quarterbacks, or Julio Jones, Odell Beckham, and AJ Green, Patrick Peterson, Tremaine Johnson, or Von Miller, Khalil Mack, or J.J. Watt. If your name is not one of those, you're not getting the first pick in trade compensation. So, as fans, please take a moment, take a breath. You know that thing where they say before you send out that tweet, count to 5? Count to 5. because nobody's giving up first-round pick for a position player. It's just not going to happen. It's bad value, and the reason we as fans look at these trades and go, oh my goodness, we got so-and-so for a 6th-round pick, because draft picks are currency. Literally, that's the way GMs and front offices look at it. Now, another one that really bothers me. If draft value is one thing, wasting draft value is equally as bad. So talking to a bunch of Browns fans recently, and I understand that Browns fans are not the greatest sample size for a level-headed, balanced fan base. There's been a number of quarterbacks that they've wanted to be a bridge to whoever they're going to draft. Most people, nobody was thinking Colin Kaepernick for the Browns. But a lot of people were saying, Kirk Cousins, get over it. That's a pipe dream. The number one free agent, whether I agree with it or not, is not going to an 0-16 team. Get your head out of the clouds. Number 2, trading for Nick Foles. Hey, while we have a moment, you're a former player.
He's not good.
Okay, Carson Wentz, who's the end-all, be-all to their dreams and hopes and wishes, tears his ACL in week 10.
Yeah.
Okay, what part of this equation says the reigning Super Bowl champions are going to trade away their backup quarterback and reigning Super Bowl MVP when your starter won't be ready until at least week 6? Do the math, people. Wentz can't be ready by the start of the season, therefore Foles cannot be moved. And you heard as much from their GM, who basically said, we'll listen to anything, but it's going to take at least a number 1 and a number 2. And what I just say, you don't give away number 1s unless that guy's name is Colin Kaepernick, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger.
It's Carson Wentz's team down the stretch.
It is.
It's Nick Foles' team right now. And he won the Super Bowl. He's the MVP. It's his team.
And here's another thought. Let's look at a situation that doesn't need a quarterback right now. Let's say, hypothetically, that... You want to go there?
No.
Because I still like Cam. But
I love Cam.
So let's look at the Houston Texans. They've got Deshaun Watson. And I'm not saying this... I don't want to jinx it, and I'm not trying to put any bad juju on the guy. But let's just assume for a second that they're struggling out of the gate and he's not completely ready to come back. Maybe it's not the right move because he's the guy. So now that I'm thinking about it, it's probably not the best analogy. But let's just assume for a second that they want to shut him down and say, look, you're not coming back until you are completely healthy, ready to go. So put him on the back burner. Now you've got a quarterback need with the Houston Texans, hypothetically. If Nick Foles goes out there and they go 5-1 with the Eagles right out of the gate, Carson Wentz is ready. He's 110%. Everything looks great. There's literally no reason to think that they wouldn't be able to go forward with Wentz.
Yeah.
I would not be surprised in the least to see a situation where you do get 2 number 2s or something for Nick Foles in the middle of the season. They are not trading him to start.
No.
So, coming back around again. The idea was there were Browns fans that wanted Kirk Cousins, not going to happen. Foles, not going to happen. Which brings us to Tyrod Taylor, which ultimately did happen. A.J. McCarron, who has a whole 5 starts, or 5 games played, 3 starts, where he did play admirably well, and there's definitely something there to be excited about. There's not a whole lot else in the way of free agent market. I hate to break it to you. Case Keenum, pipe dream, fool's gold. Case Keenum is a marginal journeyman quarterback that got dropped into the lap of a pre-made, ready-to-go playoff team.
Yeah.
You put Case Keenum in Buffalo, Cleveland, or anywhere else like that, and he is not the same player. So throw that out. Maybe he's good. Maybe he goes to Arizona. Maybe he goes somewhere, and he is fine. But Case Keenum is Trevor Siemian. He is Jim Sorgi. He's whoever you want to say. He's just not a franchise guy, which is what these guys are supposed to be. So putting all that aside, in this particular instance, the Browns get Tyrod Taylor. It actually does make a lot of sense. And there are people out there, I'm not joking. Look at my face. There are people out there who said after A.J. McCarron sued the Bengals, he sued them so that he could be a free agent. And there are people that are going, hey, the Browns just traded for Tyrod Taylor. Let's go get A.J. McCarron too.
Why?
What is wrong with...
Why?
One thing that I keep saying in conversation with fans that is driving me nuts. Based on what logic? What logic tells you that A.J. McCarron, who just sued his own team for the right to be a free agent, is going to go to an 0-16 team for the privilege to compete? No. Don't double up. Stop doubling up. Unless it's receiver, running back, tackle, guard, maybe outside linebacker and defensive back. There are places you can double up. I mentioned earlier in the show, I would absolutely love if Cleveland came out of this with let's say a Carlton Davis and a J.C. Jackson, or a Josh Jackson and J.C. Jackson, something like that. Corner's fine. You need many of those. You need many pass rushers. You need offensive linemen with position flexibility that can move around. You don't need two free agent quarterbacks in the year that they are essentially, figuratively, free agents. So stop it.
Who are y'all's quarterbacks? Kaiser?
Nope. Kaiser's in Green Bay. So,
what?
Oh yeah, John Dorsey, the new GM, he's a savage. John Dorsey is due. John Dorsey is an absolute savage. In one day, they acquired Jarvis Landry, Tyrod Taylor, shipped out Kaiser, and in return got the Green Bay Packers' #1 defensive back. So,
well, all right.
So he's doing well. No, Kaiser's gone. So right now, Cleveland's got Tyrod Taylor. And I said this like a month ago. I actually tweeted this out to the Browns directly and said, do me a favor. Release every quarterback whose name is not Kaiser.
Yeah.
And release every running back whose name is not Duke Johnson. They haven't done that, but we'll get to that later. So right now the depth chart is Tyrod Taylor, Cody Kessler, and Hogan. So both those guys hit the bricks. Nothing personal. I'm sure they're great people, but this team needs something much more than that. Yeah. So don't double up. Don't think that it's smart to double up. And if you do double up, you don't do it in free agency. You do it in the draft, and you do one high guy, one low guy.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I want Saquon Barkley, but I also would love to have Kalen Ballage. So either way, first round, fifth round, something like that. Now, another big one, and this one gives me more of a headache than the draft picks are not currency thing. When you're a fan of a team that trades back, the default narrative is to say, at some point, stop trading back. I know a lot of fans are saying, you keep trading back. Someday, you got to make those picks. And while I agree with that, to an extent, trading back is a dramatically wonderful tool with the draft that makes everything a little bit more malleable. So when I hear a fan say, I don't want them to trade back, I want them to just pick where they stand, you're being an idiot. Okay? I don't know a nice way to say it. For instance, let's just say Barkley's not in the mix. One is quarterback. They take quarterback in one. Whoever it is, I don't care who you like, just pencil that in. And then you're looking at 4. Now, let's say I'm right, and they go Barkley at 2, Chubb at 3, and now you're looking at 4, and you've got every wide receiver, all but one running back, all but one pass rusher, all but one quarterback. Well, all but 2 quarterbacks. At that point, if you're the GM and you don't love Minkah Fitzpatrick, and you know Derwin James is available 5 or 6 spots later, you see no linebacker worth taking in the top 5, but maybe Tremaine Edmonds is somebody you would take somewhere between 8 and 14. Corner, you could get Denzel Ward there, but it'd be a little bit of a reach. So the point is, the draft is not a race to get one guy. It's how do you fit the puzzle together? So let's say that in this case the Browns are picking 1, they get the quarterback. Then John Dorsey doesn't love Minkah Fitzpatrick, who is the slot at 4. If you're looking at Tremaine Edmonds, or you're looking at a Josh Jackson or a Denzel Ward or Derwin James, you trade the F back. You go from 4, and here's a fun one not everyone knows. It's called the Bill Walsh effect. Bill Walsh, coach of the 49ers during their heyday, came up with this theory that instead of doing what like Buffalo wants to do and go from 21 and 22 all the way up to top 5, you would go in increments. Now, to do that, to move up, you're giving away too much. But to move down, like if Cleveland want to go from 4 and get 21 and 22, you don't go 4 to 21 and 22. You go 4 to 6. Get the Jets' first-round pick and the Jets' second-round pick. Then you drop back down again into like Oakland and get their second-round pick. Then you drop back down again to Miami and get their. Now all of a sudden you went from 3 second-round picks to like 7 second-round picks. Right. Then when you go back down to 21, 22, then you use those to move back up again. So if you're a fan that wants them just to get the best player they can, understand there's a value to all of this. The best player they can get might be slotted at 8 through 10, and they're picking at 4. So sitting at 4 and taking 8 and 10, I understand why you think that makes sense. But it doesn't. Not to GMs and not to personnel departments. It does not make sense that way. Learn to accept trading back. Now, caveat here, and the example I'll give is Alex Mack. The year, I believe it was the year that Julio Jones came in, we were picking high, 6, I think it was, and we traded back with Atlanta so that they could get Julio Jones. Not happy about that. Right. That's still a little sore subject. But as we go down, they keep trading down. And then all of a sudden, you went from 6 to drafting the best center in the league. Now, center in the draft. Now, as it were, Alex Mack is currently probably the best center in the NFL. And I say to that, who gives a shit? You can get a great center in the middle of the second round. You can get a Hall of Fame center after the first round. Yeah. So when you trade back and trade back and trade back, you better be doing it to get someone really good at a position that is difficult to fill, or trade all the way back to trade back up. So, for those of you that basically just rail against trading, you make my brain hurt. So, anyway, with that, I just want to throw it over real quick. We do have some other things that are not Brown-centric that I want to get into. And one thing I've been dying to talk to you about specifically is a couple years ago, we had a situation here in Denver where everyone believed, with the exception of one, that Denver was going to basically throw his own words in his own face. That Denver was probably going to mollywop those Panthers. Now, the entire national narrative was that was not the case. That they were so efficient on offense and they were very stout on defense that anyone was going to have trouble.
Yes.
Now, I'm not gonna take you through that pain. We're gonna skip right over it.
Appreciate it.
Von Miller's beast. But anyway, getting past that, you would think coming into Super Bowl 50 that you dust your shoulders off, you wipe your knees, you start over again. Yeah. But you start where you left off. This was a nasty team for all of that season.
Yes.
And now you've got a situation where not much has changed personnel-wise. We finally get rid of hey, we're going to run out 2 running backs, both of which are not features, but whatever. Right. And we've officially gotten rid of that. So no more Jonathan Stewart.
No more Jonathan Stewart.
And I'll come back around to the elephant in the room, but I do believe that some of what's happening in sort of a cosmic football gods kind of way is sort of the equivalent of the curse of the Bambino. We might have a situation where we're having the curse of the Steve Smith. Because of the way they treated him, everything's kind of gone downhill after that. But you still have Cam.
Yeah.
You lost Kelvin Benjamin. I'll give you a minute on that one. You lost Kelvin Benjamin. You have arguably the best middle linebacker in all of football, and I don't know if he's playing. So, is Kuechly healthy? Is he going to be afraid of concussions? And with what they have, with Christian McCaffrey, it looks like finally they figured out how to use him.
That was one game. So it was the last game. They finally figured it out. We'll see if it continues for the rest of the next year.
Okay, so clearly the idea of we're going to get big wide receivers kind of fell through because Funches, I think, is the only one that got left.
Yeah.
Cam is still Cam. Christian is great and misused for the most part.
Yeah.
So at this point, knowing that Carolina has a tendency to focus on the front seven, Is there something you think they want or that you want out of the first round? Or even the first 50 picks if they move around?
I want a beast running back.
All right. Beast running
first
back.
round.
So, beast running back would be featured back, between the tackles, punishing.
Yes.
This brings up something we talked about earlier. Nick Chubb, who is 5'11", 6 foot, 230 pounds, 5'10" maybe. Anyway, the way I describe him, and this is what people that are looking for that, if you're a fan of somebody else, but you want a big-time featured back that can carry the load. If, as Rick pointed out, if his knees are good, if it was just an ACL and he's fine, Nick Chubb runs, I describe it as saying Nick Chubb runs with 10% more intensity than everybody else on the field. He has no problem sticking his head down and driving. He's one of... What scared me about him was at first I got the impression that he was no Sean Moreno. Just like I got the impression that Sony Michel is no Sean Moreno. And I really think that that's more accurate than Nick Chubb is. Yeah. Nick Chubb, and I don't have a direct comparison for him, but Nick Chubb runs like he's Marshawn Lynch, but not in a Marshawn Lynch body. So that's an option. And then you guys, if you haven't seen him yet, anybody, if you haven't checked him out, Rashad Penny, who plays for San Diego State, might be the most just raw talented guy that isn't named Saquon Barkley. He's like 6'1.5", 235, 240, and straight up trucks people.
Everybody.
Runs over, through and around if he has to, but if you're in the way and it's faster, he would probably just soon run over you. Yeah. So there are options there. So we've got Carolina is an intriguing scenario. New England can bite me. Yeah, they keep and going back to the trade down thing. Just look at the Patriots. Fans always want to look to the Patriots. Oh, look how they do it. Okay, fine. How many times does Bill Belichick pick where he stands?
Exactly.
He almost always trades back because the guys that fit the Bill Belichick system are not the same guys that everyone projects to go high. And the only exception to that I can even think of is Gerard Mayo, who's a very solid player, retired early, but they moved up to the top 5 to get a guy that no one was thinking about, and he was fine. You've got an intriguing situation in San Francisco only because I don't think I can remember a team that's kind of put it all together so quickly. They basically, ownership before the 2017 season came out put out a press release that basically read something to the effect of, we're going to lose, so just ride it out. We've had success with this franchise. Trust us that we will have it again, but for the immediate future, this is going to be a bad football team.
John Lynch.
And the fans, hey, take note, Cleveland, the fans actually embraced the notion. They said, you know what? We will suffer and be bad to be good later. And they're doing it. They went out and got Garoppolo, which really, for those that are confused about the Garoppolo thing, Garoppolo was the best backup to Tom Brady that Tom Brady's ever had. And Tom Brady went to Kraft and said, look, I love that we got a good player, but I don't like the fact that he's going to take my job soon. So Tom Brady told Bob Kraft, I want you to get rid of him. I don't like feeling the footsteps. So then Robert Kraft went to Bill Belichick, and I wish I was a fly on the wall for this conversation, and told Bill Belichick to trade his backup and the guy that Bill Belichick perceives to be the heir apparent to Tom Brady and what was going to keep this train running. And he said, no, you're going to trade him because I don't like Tom Brady being upset. So Belichick said, okay, all you're asking me to do is to trade him away from this team. Yes. So Bill Belichick called the first NFC West. He wanted Garoppolo on the other side of the country, and he wanted him on an NFC team, which is why Cleveland was never going to get him. And they called up John Lynch, and he said, Garoppolo, second-round pick, yes or no? And Lynch was like, I ain't no fool. Yes. Right. So that's done. You've been collecting. They've been shedding weight on the offensive and defensive lines, starting with but not limited to some of those bigger offensive line and defensive tackles that were eating up a lot of that salary. They have begun to get some players in there. Now, they still have holes, but they seem to be doing it in a nice, balanced way where they've got now Richard Sherman is your number one corner, so you don't have to worry about your first corner being great. He just has to be complimentary. Who's Eric Reed, the other big 49er protester. Eric Reed's a free agent, but I think he'll be back with the 49ers. So they're an intriguing situation. Oakland is interesting. I don't think in a good way. I love Khalil Mack. I think he's phenomenal. I was on board with him long before the draft process started out of Little Buffalo University. I think Derek Carr is very solid. I've always thought that Amari Cooper was overdrafted, and I don't think Marshawn Lynch is long for it. I think he came back. He did his thing in Oakland. He'll be out before they go to Las Vegas. So Oakland. Oh, yeah. The whole thing about Marshawn Lynch playing for Oakland is because it's Oakland.
Yeah.
Now, the moment that's no longer his hometown team anymore, he's probably not going to care. So I think they probably might be looking at running back at some point. The team that's probably the sexiest right now, and because of that, they don't have to worry so much about the draft, is, I can't believe I'm saying these words out loud, the Rams.
I was about to say that.
Okay, first of all, Rams, can you do us all a favor? Can you please just sign Aaron Donald and be done with it? He is, without question, the best defensive tackle in all of football. He's barely 6 foot, and he absolutely kills it. And what are you dicking around for? Pay him already. So pay Aaron Donald. They just got, they traded for both Marcus Peters and Aqib Talib. So their back end is set. They already had a nice pair of safeties. They did trade away Alex Ogletree, inside linebacker, I believe to Buffalo. The offensive line is good enough. Jared Goff has proven that he's absolutely one of these franchise guys. They did not tag Sammy Watkins, so there's an intrigue there. If I were the Rams and Sammy Watkins isn't necessarily in play, I would absolutely be putting all of your resources into Allen Robinson out of Jacksonville. So there's plenty of things to be excited about this draft. But like I said at the top, as a fan of a team that is often drafting in the top, it's weird to say this, but the story of the draft is the Browns, whether you like it or not. They are making moves. They are doing things. They have the national attention of all NFL fans right now with what John Dorsey has been able to do. Now, the question is, what do you do at 1-4? What you do at 1-4 dictates everything else. Yeah. So, hopefully, and I might get hit for saying this, but I think that the Cleveland Browns are going to trade a few assets to the New York Giants at 2, so that we can take the one player the New York Giants are supposed to get, and that would be Saquon Barkley. And I'll be very upset if we don't do that. And I am getting hate stares from the peanut gallery. So, anything in particular that you want? The one thing they need. Anything else you want to hit before we bow out and are inundated with Kaepernick commentary before we run this out?
No, nothing.
So
nothing pressing I can think of.
Well, one thing we are looking forward to is we are going to do a live broadcast of some sort from the draft. Now, and when I say from, we're going to do it like from the studio. Right. I'm not going to the draft. Now, there is some exciting news. I don't know if you caught on this. The NFL offices released the last 2 candidates for the next draft. 4 years ago was the last time we had it in Radio City Music Hall. The NFL wants to move it around to different places. Yeah. Denver and Cleveland are the 2 locations for the next 2 drafts.
Really?
Now, whether you knew this or not,
that's locked in?
Yeah. Okay. 2020, the 2 are, which is not, but I'm going to answer that question right here. 2020 is the NFL Centennial in April of 1920, believe it or not. In Canton, Ohio, the legal side creating what is now known as the NFL was signed and put in place 1920, April, in Canton, Ohio. So to me, the logical thing is to make the 2020 draft in Cleveland/Canton because they're basically gonna image it as it's Cleveland and Canton.
Right.
But do that. Rick off the air actually mentioned that they are already beginning to build the Hall of Fame village, where they'll expand out the Football Hall of Fame so that you could go to Canton and you can have that whole NFL experience and all that stuff. Which tells me that 2019 is Denver. Now they're not going to announce that until at least after this draft. So fair to assume that in 2018, we're going to do a live reaction show in real time so you can see grown man cussing at television screens. And then 2019, if you're up for it, you and I will be going to the draft to rub elbows and get interviews, get audio, maybe even pull some guests. And then, in addition to that, I will be flying out to Cleveland, staying with some friends, and making a big old party of it, going to see the draft in 2020. I have even told my 6-year-old that at that point in time he will be 8, and I'm going to see if I can convince his mother to let me drag him to the combine, where he will be bored out of his mind.
Yes, he will.
Now, that brings us to one last thing we want to mention, too, before we get to getting out of here, and that is there is big news as we start this endeavor, and we got to give a big thank you and shout out to Jersey, who's producer extraordinaire and host of his own property, who was able to pull, and you don't even know this yet, Will Parks.
Really?
Will Parks, safety for the Denver Broncos, will at some point in the relative near future be joining us, probably even in studio, to talk things about the Denver Broncos and the NFL in general. So from there, I've also been told that there's some things down the pipe that it helps to know somebody who knows people.
Absolutely, always.
So
it's all about who you know.
So, yeah, in this business, it's absolutely about who you know, not what you know. So there are some big names, and I'm not going to say what they are. I will just tease you with this. One of them, and we are going to chase this delicately, is arguably the greatest football player at his position of all time, who played in the northeastern region of the country, who had some off-the-field issues and nobody cares, and is a stat filler. And when someone says you are trying to be this kind of player, that's the man they're describing. And if you can put those dots together, you'll figure out who we're talking about. You understand how big of a get that would be. We are legitimately talking about the greatest player at his position of all time. I'm not even going to begin to tell you how we're able to pull that off. So if we get that, we will let you know. We'll promote the hell out of it. Look forward to other things along with FDH. We may even be trying to see if we can organize some sort of a fun little fan-based pro wrestling thing just for the hell of it. So, again, this
pro entertainment wrestling. There's a difference.
So, this property, this endeavor that we're going to, as we mentioned, will be primarily football, basketball related. But when things are good, when things need to be mentioned, we will find a way to do that. So, for Ricardo, Rick Morris, DJ will catch up with you next time. He does have a great workup on quarterbacks we want to talk about. And everyone here at the Triple J Studios.